This is a show about facing fear, unlocking courage, and taking action.
Courage isn't necessarily a daunting thing.
It's going to give you more purpose. It's going to give you more drive.
It feels like making a courageous decision is going to get you closer to who you aspire to be.
It's knowledge plus faith plus action equals courage.
You know, nothing's perfect. You're always going to make mistakes, and that's totally fine. Take these educated risks. And without taking a risk, you're never going to succeed. So if you do something and it doesn't necessarily work out, that's okay. Like, at least we took a chance. You know, we're not just following the norm.
I mean, here's probably the most courageous thing I'm going to say. It's bullshit that you get to present creative with your fancy accent because, like, let's call it what it is. I mean, this is like an extra secret weapon, right?
My British accent. Well, it is, but also technically, soccer, football. You know,
look at you! Wow,
is a British sport. You know, well, from back in the, I should technically be the master at discussing creative about soccer than other sports. So we're in it with a British accent, maybe.
well, okay. I should go back up to the top. So let's go back up to the top. All right. So for anyone that's taking a listen, you're probably listening for one of four reasons. One, you're a long-time listener, and I am like grateful that you choose to spend 30 to an hour with me on a weekly basis. So that's really, really cool. Two, you probably love soccer or football, as some might call it, and you're aware of Will's ridiculously large challenge competing in his own city now on how to make the galaxy. And the galaxy, I mean, gosh, if you ever get an opportunity to walk the building, you will feel the legacy, you will feel the trophies. And I know fans, I know what you're thinking. That doesn't have anything to do with this season, and we want to win now. And we'll talk about that. Three, if you look at the work, Will, that you've done in your career, and you can't not notice when you go to willmisselbrook.com, there's a free plug. I mean, you've got Nike and Commanders and BBC and Google and Gucci and Cosmopolitan, which I've learned is not Cosmo, by the way. It's Cosmopolitan, people. Right. And so just the work you've been able to, and it's not just even the work. Like, I think a lot of creatives surrender themselves to a niche, and then down the niche rabbit hole you go, and you're an expert in healthcare, you're an expert in this, and you've been able to sort of run the gamut of industries and verticals, which is awesome. And then fourth, yes, I'll set this up with the story. I'd say about, 8 months ago, in a foreign land, you and I are trapped in the mountains, and we're both speaking at the gathering. And, if you know me, I'm a Washington Redskins / Washington Commanders fan. And the minute I saw that you were on the docket, I was like, I am going to this meeting. And little boy Ryan Berman, not even meeting, your session, little boy Ryan Berman, 8-year-old Ryan Berman with a head of hair, was like, I am going to hear what this man has to say. And I was like wildly impressed with you
and my bullshit accent, right?
I hold on. I didn't say the accent was bullshit. I just think it gives you a little extra. So you might be listening because you're an NFL fan, you're a Commanders fan. And so, first of all, Will, you're about, you're probably like, what are you, a month in now, 2 months into this new world?
Couple of months in at LA Galaxy, and thank you, mate, for the kind words. It was I really appreciate the lead up backstory to that. It should be my PR agent. That was great, so I appreciate it.
I do have a pretty expensive rate. I don't think that's a good idea. But look, what most people don't know about you is even through the Commanders' work, you were basically commuting from LA to DC every week.
Well, the first, I guess, 8 months, 6 to 8 months of joining the then Washington football team, we were still in COVID. So thankfully, everything was working remotely, and I'd moved to LA about a year before taking the Washington football team job. So working remote was fine. And then obviously when we were back into real world, my now wife was adamant we weren't going to move to DC. So I had to, basically get on a plane Monday, come back Friday for, almost a year and a half, basically. So it's nice to be rooted here. Although actually, mate, honestly, the commute to work here at Galaxy is probably the same amount of time as it is getting on a plane to DC and back once a week than sitting in a car 2 hours a day. So yeah, it's actually evens out.
All right, well, there's lots in there too. So first of all, this is, I think, the first time I verbally heard you say the words "my wife."
Well, thank you. Yeah,
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, I got married about a month ago, I think it was. So yeah.
All right, let's hear the honeymoon choice. Where'd you go?
We haven't done it yet. We had a destination wedding because of family London. Her family's East Coast. We're West Coast. We've actually got married in Antigua. So technically that's kind of within itself is, kind of nice little honeymoon. But yeah, we decided, and I'd also just joined Galaxy. I'd been here for like a week and then told my boss, Chris, I was like, hey, look, I got to take a week off for a wedding. Even though I've just joined, shall I delay the start date? He's like, no, it's totally fine. So I literally just joined, did a week here in the office, flew out, did the wedding, and then came straight back into the office. Yeah, we delayed the honeymoon until I think next year, we're thinking.
And where are you thinking? Where are you going?
I don't know. I mean, Japan, maybe, we're thinking. We haven't really, honestly, kind of solidified it, but thinking there could be fun. Probably need another beach moment at some point, but yeah.
I mean, technically, I guess you're a little busy, right? You're in season. The season has started. You're rolling up your sleeves on this. So you're the last two titles that you've had, they're long titles, by the way, Chief Creative Officer and Chief Content Officer. That's one business card. So you were Chief Creative Officer and Chief Content Officer for the Commanders, and here you are again, Chief Creative Officer, Chief Content Officer for the Galaxy. But really, are you also CMO? I mean, is there a CMO or is that you?
Yeah, no, it's all, at the end of the day, everything I do and have done is all in marketing, right? It's all rooted in marketing. And I oversee the marketing group here, and I also did at the Commanders as well. I think when I remember speaking to Washington football team at the time about the role, they were like, "Oh, we want to call you title you as a chief marketing officer." I was kind of like, the world of marketing has evolved and changed so much, and I think the CMO role within itself has changed, especially when it comes to entertainment and media and sort of the lifestyle space which sports is rooted in. I was like, look, I'm coming at this from a different lens than the traditional CMO function, in the sense of like, I'm coming at it much more from the storytelling, putting the creative at the very forefront versus, and this isn't me shitting on CMOs in any way at all, looking at it much more from the analytics or the media spend perspective, and not having to outsource a lot of the work to agencies. It's controlling our narrative and putting that at the forefront of everything we do in order to tell more compelling stories that's going to hopefully reach an audience in a way that is authentic and content that they want to engage with versus being forced to engage with. So I remember when I spoke to the football team, I was like, look, the chief creative officer role or chief content officer role is not unique in so many other industries, such as entertainment. And if we are moving towards being a full entertainment and media brand, why not my role be focused as that versus a chief marketing officer? That's how we ended up, coming to that agreement when I was at Washington football team. And as I said, like, everything I still do is all rooted in marketing, but just flipping the more traditional model on its head a little bit and putting the creative at the forefront. And then when I was, talking to Galaxy, they were like, oh yeah, we kind of want the same, your same title. And I was like, all right, well, it's long, like you said, but yeah, sure. Let's, I want to keep the same momentum going and bring that thought process and strategy to the MLS versus just the NFL. So yeah.
I don't see how I can't toggle back between both worlds, because I mean, you're just starting this new world, and we met in your last world, so forgive me for that. But can you share how you tiptoed into, like, how did Commanders happen? Because if I remember, it was freelance first, right?
No, okay, I have to back up. But thank you for having me on your show, by the way. I'm so honored to be on this. So I really appreciate you taking the time, and for all the listeners, I actually have you to thank for this role, my role here at Galaxy. You're the one who introduced me to Chris Klein, who's now my boss. So it's all because of you, mate.
Oh man, I'm crying over here a little bit. Come on.
No, you are. Yeah, it was when we were hanging out. We connected afterwards, and you're like, hey, here's another football that you actually might know more about. And I was like, actually, yeah, I do know more about soccer than American football. the Commanders role. So yeah, before that, I was on the media side. I was at Wall Street Journal as their chief creative officer there, and I'd known two guys at the Commander Washington football team, Greg Resch, who was the COO and CFO, and I'd known Jason Wright, the president as well. And I remember chatting to Greg early on, and he was asking me questions about like how, in order for them to transform more into a brand and really pushing into the entertainment and media space, and was like just kind of picking my brain a bit, like what are ways we should be approaching our content and creative strategy. And so I was basically helping, give them some advice / ideas. And after a couple of months of just conversations and even helping sort of develop some initial concepts for those guys, that's when Greg was like, look, we and Jason got on the phone, like, look, we want you to come and join us. And so at that time, honestly, I obviously I'm a big NFL fan, but I didn't know Washington football team. I was like, who are these guys? They're like a college team? So I had to look them up. I was like, oh shit, yes, this is they're serious. I just didn't realize the interim name from Redskins to Washington football teams. And I was like fascinated by that. The move coming away from Dan was like, yeah, look, we want to really push towards being entertainment and media. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is the right opportunity. Let's do this. Do something different that hasn't been done in the NFL. And a lot of the work that I keep seeing from all the teams was so archaic. It was so old school. It was so one way. It was very much so, here are the plays, here are the plays. So I was like, all right, let's try and do something different. And honestly, I didn't even know I was walking into the rebrand, to be honest. So that was a nice added extra surprise when I kind of joined. They'd started that process, but hadn't sort of got as far along, I guess, as when I'd first joined. So that was fun to take on the entire rebrand on top of that. So yeah, it was just knowing a couple of people, having a bunch of conversations and hearing about how they wanted to progress and differentiate themselves and be a little bit more progressive in that space of content, branding, and creative that it came about.
Well, the Wall Street Journal, that makes sense. Like when I hear that as your background, because that is a media entity, and so I could see how your strategy is like, hey, we're a media entity. We're not just a football club. Like, and I mean, you pulled it off, man. I mean, it's not just, people probably don't know this, but there's a Washington branded studios, right? Like, it's not just the team. There's now a studio that you've been able to help them build, or you built with them before you left. And I should probably say also, because if I was a listener and I was me and I was a fan, I would want to make sure this is clear. First, it was I couldn't believe how they kept the secret. With the exception that's on the very end, and Joe Theismann maybe saying something he shouldn't have. Like, and you weren't really part of the. I don't think you were part of the naming, but you were part of the beauty. Is that accurate?
I think I joined. We were down to like the final 3 or 5. I forget now. So I was definitely part of the process in deciding and helping decide, the final name. It obviously wasn't my final decision to go with the final name. It's the owners, but I gave my input when I first joined, like day one, when I sort of saw. I think it was the final 3 names we were down to, and like obviously going through the whole process, there was a lot of legalities, a lot of copyright checking, and a lot of trademark reviews of what else is out there, and that also helped decide. But the process itself was very inclusive with fans and the wider community. We had a lot of fan ambassadors involved. The Native American community were involved in the whole process, and we took it very seriously in terms of looking at a lot of the name selections that had come through, and a lot of them made it down to like the final 10, I think. It was inclusive, but yeah, the secrecy side, that was a challenge. Even internally, there were only like 8 of us, I think, or 9 of us working on the rebrand for a major NFL team, because anyone outside of that bubble, we couldn't let anyone else in, just for the fear of it leaking. So it was a very, very tight knit group. And then the other added pressure was working with external partners like Nike or anyone else we had to bring in to the secret world was also a challenge, because then you're obviously putting a bit more risk in that space as well, make sure things don't leak. But yeah.
So again, here's the second courageous thing I'll probably say, and I'll leave it at this. I also remember walking in the room, and it's like, imagine your ex-girlfriend is dating a dude, and then you're like, shit, I actually like the dude. Right? Like, cause like I have visceral, when I was 7, 8 years old, 9 years old, this is nostalgia row. We're going to the Redskins games, and they're actually winning championships back then. And so I remember wanting to not like the work And then I was like, deep down, I'm like, shit, like it's clean, it's modern, and it's, it's so easy to be in the line of fire and like, I don't like this, but like I did like the work. I do think it's clean. I do think it's fresh. I do think it's modern. Do I think it's my number one choice on names? I probably have another one, but I have a very different reason for it. And it doesn't
Mhm.
matter anyway. If you were sitting in the job that, like, I think 5 years ago was probably my dream job. It's like if you could do what you love and make money doing it. By the way, anyone listening, that's the secret. Like, you have to have passion for what you do, and if you can find a way to monetize it, you're off and
Mm.
running. So I remember being in there and being like, I like that shit. I like that. Okay, that's pretty good. Oh, damn. All right, I see why you did that. And actually, like, your perspective as an outsider, to your
Yeah.
point, probably was like you could play the unemotional card versus the fan card.
100%. Yeah, mate, that's exactly it. It was enabling me. I mean, I am like a big sports guy, but NFL wasn't certainly my number one sport or isn't my number one sport. But I wasn't, going into it with that emotional attachment of being a true fan to the club because I probably would have not made some decisions we were able to make. So I was able to detach from that. And it really helped, I guess, thinking about it as a brand and what the kind of stories we should be telling that's going to help diversify who we are in the broader landscape, making us globally relevant versus still thinking about the Redskins days. So it did certainly help in from my perspective going in because I was kind of like, well, I'm just going to treat this like I would a brand narrative and make this into a bigger storytelling piece versus just about the team I love and I'm dedicated to.
Add on the accent, forget it. Just forget it. It's like,
Well,
all
no,
right,
because now I'm just known as like the reverse Ted Lasso. Everyone's like, well, you're the guy. He has no idea about it, and you're going into sport. But no, I mean,
did you buy that URL? Please buy that URL,
reverse Ted Lasso.
reversetedlasso.com. That can't be a bad thing. All right, speaking of accents and global games, so here you are. You're back in LA. Yeah, you have a commute, but at least it's four wheels versus however many are on a
Right.
plane. And you've got the global game, and you've got, I mean, Chikorito. It's the beautiful game, but you've got like the team is comprised of multiple countries, multiple players. It truly is an international affair. Very different. The NFL, it's funny, I had Tim Ellis on a couple weeks ago. We know, where they're trying to expand and diversify. Now, MLS gets this Apple deal. That can't be
Yeah.
bad. And it's LA. So you're home and you walk into the room. Like, what do you think so far?
Oh man, it's you talk about dream jobs. I mean, I grew up when I was growing up in London. I mean, I've been a fan of Galaxy. I mean, not like as much of my hometown Premier League team, but like from any person growing up in the UK, we all like Galaxy was the biggest team in America. And obviously Beckham, Robbie Keane's, Gerrard's, like they helped elevate that and make it like a globally relevant club or team. And so yeah, I was like, yeah, I was always a huge fan. They are the most iconic MLS team in America ever. In terms of not only the rich history it has. It's just like it has that the breadth because of a lot of the big names that come here. And so, God, it was like a dream come true for me to be able to work not only because it's football that I understand, but also just working for LA Galaxy. This is such an incredible, iconic team, and the stories that it has is great. But for me, it's like okay, we now have an opportunity since the Beckham days where the brand was a cutting edge in some ways, in terms of reputation and relevance. And so, it's not saying it's. I feel like we lost our way a little bit, but we need that resurgence. We're going to reignite the relevancy of this brand and this club and the team, and put us back at the forefront of soccer in America. And this is what I think it is the most increasing sort of engaged sport in America right now by 5x soccer right now, and the World Cup is obviously helping put a magnifying glass on it as well. So God, now is the time. Now is the time for Galaxy to restake its claim. And obviously, Galaxy back then, there were half, if not even a third, of the number of clubs competing within MLS. So it's a lot more competition, and a lot of other brands. We have another LA brand or soccer team that's obviously popped up along the way, and they've tried to sort of muscle into our territory a little bit. But that's to me was like you don't take a job that you're necessarily totally qualified for, or you're do you think it's already half complete or completed? For me, this is the challenge is like, all right, we have a great team, we have a great club. Yeah, sure, we've had a pretty shitty start to our season, but the brand itself is the foundation's there. It just needs to be reignited. We need to refine like who we are, our identity, and make ourselves present again, and innovate in all the stories we're telling, how we're showing up both in the community but to the wider world, and start to put a focus back on like who we are and what we represent.
Just so this is on the record, I'm a Chris Klein fan. I think he's being a shit ton of crap. And look, I get it. If I'm a fan, and of course you want to win, of course, and people are like visceral about it. And I'm a Vanny fan too. I like what Vanny's doing, and this stuff takes time. But there is a line, there's just like one of these lines in marketing: nothing kills a bad product faster than great marketing.
Mm.
Now, I'm not saying it's a bad product, right? That's the furthest thing what I'm saying. It's a tough start to the season, right? And so winning solves a lot of problems. Let's just call it, winning helps the culture, feels good about the culture. When you walk in there, how do you make sure that like what you think you know about the galaxy versus doing the research? Like what does that look? What does that lap look like for you when you get in there?
Yeah, it's very different when you walk inside the doors versus seeing it from outsider's perspective. Because when I was looking at from outsider's perspective, you're looking at a lot of the content, the creative that's being put out, and you're putting a judgment on that. And obviously, the team performance. I mean, I joined as the season was just beginning. Obviously, like you said, winning always helps. But like one of the biggest reasons I joined was because Chris Klein. I love the guy. I think he's one of the most humble, most thoughtful, strategic leaders I've ever met in my entire life. And the culture he has built here is phenomenal. It is night and again. This is me sort of putting down sort of working for the Commanders, but like in terms of just the camaraderie, the passion, and the friendly feel that we have inside these walls, all working towards the same common goal, is built because of Chris, right? And he's been a part of this team not only because he played and was a legend, back in the day when he played, but as the president of this team as well. Like I believe in his vision as well as Greg, and Greg is an incredible head coach. So the plan that they built prior to me joining, obviously, is still coming to fruition, and we still have work to do, but I believe in Chris, in Greg, the team on the field and our team off the field. And so it's like coming into this environment that is everyone's so dedicated to the work we're doing day in day out, and people are killing themselves here because we believe in what this club represents and what we should be standing for. And so, I'm here to help whatever I can do to help and continue to improve that relationship with not only our supporters and our fans, but also continue to grow our story and fan base as globally as I possibly can, to people to recognize and see the hard work and passion that goes into this team and what an MLS team stands for, that is LA Galaxy.
Yeah, I will second that. Maybe this is a better way to say it. There's a lot of ego in leadership. There's a lot of slickness in leadership. And what I love most about Chris is he's real and he listens.
Yeah.
He's not going to pretend to know it all. And that's what I like most about him, is he's approachable. And I don't know, I just feel like, of course, if I'm a fan, I want my team to win. And especially because you have a team in the market now, another team in LA that's doing very well. I'm sure it makes it for a trying start to the season.
Yeah, no, it is. But as I said, and I don't have an influence on what happens on the field, but the players we all want the same thing, and we love our fans, and obviously we want to do right by our fans, our supporters, and winning is obviously always does help, but the mentality and that the positive momentum, especially if we're doing anything off the field creatively, you've got to the product on the field is always going to impact and reflect everything we do off the field. So, but the whole team is dedicated and it has the same vision and passion to succeed here, and that boils from Chris all the way down to our youth team. Everyone in between has got that same ambition for us to do good.
I know that you're in fire hose mode because, I mean, how could you not? Like, you just started, the season started, and there's a reality to the type of creative that you have to put out into the ether. But I'm sure you have lots of tips and tricks that you'd like to get to for the brand. Before we do that, one of the reasons I felt like that you were a good fit, and again, I'm not saying like you did the work, not me. I loved your process. like there was a methodology to how, like I remember seeing like that
Yeah.
sort of like thoughtful. Can you share a little bit about that? Because I think anyone that's going to onboard would learn something from the process.
Well, I remember bouncing. Yeah, I put together this like plan. Remember, I sent it to you actually. Do you remember before I'd even? I think I sent it to Chris and some of the others here. I mean, that's how I always try and approach it. It's like, and you and I were talking about it. It's like, we have to make people believe again, and it's time for us to take back Los Angeles and break through the noise, the clutter, through the saturated environment of content. And so I built out this like that what was going through my head, and I started to put it down on paper with visuals just to help represent exactly how I think that what we need to do to make this change through the storytelling and the marketing and content. To your first question, yeah, it's hard when you join a team when the season's already started, right? Because I'm constantly chasing myself in some ways. Or I've got two jobs. You got one where I'm really trying to redefine the brand strategy, the vision of how we should be portrayed. But then we're also chasing every single game. We're having to put out a lot of content to continue to get awareness and get people excited about the upcoming matches we've got coming. So it's finding that balance of like, okay, so when, what can we do to stop X content going out that doesn't feel right on our future brand strategy, and which I worked through and presented, and sort of we're beginning to see it come to fruition in some ways, but there's so much more to do. I'm also a big believer of less is more. Like so many other sports teams out there just pump out content all the time for the sake of it, and it's very one way, and that can have an impact on a brand itself, because and you're just like you're desaturating the meaning of the content and what you're putting out. There's not the quality of focus, or the focus of quality, should I say, on what's being put out and is actually representing the brand. It can be detrimental to brands as well if you're just dumping so much content out there hourly. People aren't stopping and spending time to take in what you're sort of putting out there. So I've got a focus of a quality over quantity. But yeah, it's the two parts of like, one is defining the brand strategy, the vision, continuing to put out a lot of the content. And then we have a lot of other big initiatives we're starting to put in place that is community focused. It is bigger storytelling pieces. It is more about who we are, what we represent, and then finding innovative ways to bring these to life across different channels and platforms that stop people and actually get their attention, depending on whatever it is. And a lot of that is off the field as well. A lot of people want to know what happens behind the doors here, and this isn't just the 11 players turning up on the pitch every day. It's what is fueling them, what is driving them, what are they into, what are they doing the 6 days to Saturday, what are their personal lives all like. So it opening up those doors humanizes not only the players, the brand, the club. It also just allows people to see that we are humans, and everyone what the people have to go through, the psychology and the physical stress a lot of the players and also us as the front office have to go through day in day out in order to achieve success.
Look, I love what you said about it's not just like the 90 minutes here on the pitch.
Right.
This is LA. There's a star in the galaxy, logo for a reason. And when you think of LA and culture, like what is Chicharito like on Saturday? Is he in Venice? I think there's like almost a romantic but modern way to bring those stories to life. What are these guys like off the field? And so I could totally see you going in that direction. By the way, where that's probably a positive. I'm curious if you've encountered the negative, which would be, in DC, everybody wishes the Commanders were winning on a regular basis.
Right.
In LA, not that everybody's obviously wishing for the Galaxy to do well too, but you're competing with Dodgers and Clippers and Lakers and another soccer team. And by the way, you're also competing against the Los Angeles Beach. I mean, it's a different type of threat. No.
No, I mean, DC is a very culturally rich city as well as LA. They're just different cultures, right? And yeah, we have more sports teams here in LA, so the market is saturated with more sports teams, whereas the Commanders, I mean, there are obviously other sports teams in DC, but the Commanders is probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest team, I think there. But that I think to your point on like making us, well, we have to make ourselves culturally and socially relevant, right? And that's LA is so amazing for that because there's so many. It is, I think, probably one of the biggest hubs in America that defines what culture is, not only because of the Hollywood presence, but just there's so many different divisions within of race, of the different communities of it's so diverse, with in terms of a cultural perspective, which makes it so much more exciting and fun. I'm not saying that DC wasn't, but it offers a different challenge, but one that I think is again rooted in what Galaxy initially stood for back in when it was founded. So I think it has the foundation of owning LA from a soccer perspective, but I think a lot of the people that have come through this club over the years are representations of the most diverse culture that is out there. So it's a fun challenge, and so yeah, me and my bullshit accent from London, where it rains 10 months of the year, coming to sunny Los Angeles is I also come from a different culture, and I'm not from here, so that also helps in some ways because my eyes are still open to like what's trending, what is cool, what isn't cool, or what is happening out there in society that we can start to use and represent within some of our storytelling and make it sort of again bring the relevancy back to who we are as a club and also what we stand for.
I know that you're new in the gig and time is running quick on this pod. So one last question for you, and then back to work, right? So look, there's lots of teams. Galaxy as a team is one team, and one of the things I loved about Chris Klein, this was last year. He brought the front office team together with the players and gave me the opportunity to address everybody. And I thought that's a leader. And I think a lot of MLS clubs don't do that. They don't mess with the players. Maybe there's fear, on like why
Right.
Chris was not that. He's like one message. And I think Vanny, I got to address all of them, and I think he was pleasantly surprised about the topic of like how we need to be bold, how we need to be courageous. I think my message was how to live on the right side of the hyphen, which is the left side of the hyphen.
Yeah, I love that.
Which
Yeah,
sounds
that's cool.
confusing, but
That's cool.
winnings, you're on the left side of the hyphen. So, but now you go into this organization and you think about your team, and you've got this marketing team, this content team, inside this leadership team. You're on both teams. You're also on the Galaxy team. Lots of teams. How are you holding up right now with managing all the different teams? And on the flip, and I may not get a perfectly honest answer, but how are they like? How is the content team dealing with you? Are they like completely different direction? Do you feel like they're adopting what you're pushing?
I hope so, mate. Otherwise, we should ask them. Maybe they're like, "No, he's an idiot." Well, how do I articulate this? I like to show the team in terms of creative ideas, content versus just being like, "Hey, come back to me with a bunch of ideas, and I'll just pick one." Right? And I've worked for a lot of leaders in my life, and the ones that truly know their craft, and you can see their passion, and you can see the fact that they know what they're talking about. To me, is the leaders that I always really respected and wanted to work for versus others who and I'm obviously not naming names, but others who you can tell are a bit of a fraud, and they've got through their careers through the politics maybe versus actually knowing all of their craft. So I spent so much time trying to inspire my team by actually coming up with genuine like ideas and strategies, and even going down to the nitty-gritty of photoshopping work just to show them that this is I'm real, and I'm not obviously I'm fake, and trying to, which I say I should back it up. The team here is awesome. Like it's almost they're not separate. There's no segregation in terms of groups within this within the front office of LA Galaxy, which the Commanders was a lot bigger in terms of the organization, a lot more people, whereas here it's the same construct and structure from an organization's perspective. You got your ticketing group, you've got your sponsorship, you've got your marketing group, you've got the different teams, but it's just a slightly smaller amount of people. So I'm used to it's the same world structure wise, just a slightly smaller group, which is a lot better and easier because it's you can speak to each other quicker, and you can get through a lot of processes a lot quicker as well. So like I spend a lot of time hands on with my group, just to make sure that they are feeling inspired, and I'm not here to critique and sort of throw things out and be like, no, I hate all this, and be that boss that comes in and is just trying to use fear as a way to lead. It's much more I'm trying to lead through inspiration versus the fear factor. And again, that comes through showing, and that you prove your quality and craft by showing up and showing the quality of the work, and then that has that ripple effect out into other areas within the front office and onto soccer as well. They can start to see quality of the storytelling and the work that we're putting out, and the people want to get involved. Like the players are like, holy shit, I saw that was awesome, I want to do more of that. Or the coaches like, holy shit, that piece you did out and the academy was amazing. Like, we need to be doing more of that with our storytelling. So it's kind of, doing, not saying is kind of my big mantra, and testing, and like nothing's perfect. You're always going to make mistakes, and that's totally fine. Take these educated risks, and without taking a risk, you're never going to succeed. So if you do something and it doesn't necessarily work out, that's okay. Like, at least we took a chance. We're not just following the norm. And one thing I always tell my team when I first arrived here is like, guys, like, one thing I don't want to hear, or two things. One thing I don't want to hear is, hey, we did this last year, we should do this again. Like, fuck that. We should not be doing what we did last year. We should be doing everything differently and new. Like, think up new ways to approach things. And I don't want to hear from my team as well as like, oh, we saw the team in Chicago or Austin were doing this, we should do that same thing. We're not here to copy other people. We're trying to differentiate ourselves in everything we're doing, both from the brand, the product, the content, in order to cut through that noise and make us, the stories we tell, just differentiate ourselves. So that's been a lot of my focus as well, is like inspiring people here to think differently. Look at what people are doing in fashion, what they're doing in music, what they're doing in finance. It could be anywhere. Like, what other brands are doing in other spaces is such a great place to gain your inspiration, and how you can then take pieces of that and apply it to our methodology is important. Because if a brand is, I don't know, selling water bottles, but they're doing such a great job of it, it's not necessarily about the product. It's actually about how they apply the challenge of selling a water bottle to a mass consumer base. So, a lot of the sessions I do with my team is going out there and looking at what other brands and other people are doing in different spaces, and seeing how we can start to take inspiration from that and apply it to our own ideologies and methodologies from storytelling.
Well, again, I think even that, like, there's iconic LA, right? Like, what iconic LA brands are just, right? And I guess you can make a case and challenge me that iconic in general. Like, what are those iconic marks? I just think iconic LA is so very much like on the nose. All right, look, I'm going to make a note to myself.
Mate, you got to come out to a game. That's why I need you to come tomorrow. You want to see this for yourself,
My knee is a little shaky. I can't start. I can come off the bench. Maybe I can come off the bench. I'd love to come up, and maybe, yeah, I'm gonna make a note that a year from now that I'm gonna have you back on the show or the newsletter, depending on how busy you are, because I think a year from now you'll have a chance to deal with the floodgates that you're dealing with now, but also have some time off to, like, if I know you, there's a branded studio idea in here. It might be
there
that.
already is, mate. Galaxy Studios is already on its way.
All right, cool. And take us home, man. If there's like one takeaway for the listener, let's say the listener is a content creator, or perhaps they want to be a content creator, or they're a marketer, or they're creative. You can pick. What do you want them to walk away from our conversation?
Wow. I think you're a legend, by the way. So, Ryan, thank you for having me on your show. So that's one thing. People should tune in each week for Ryan, because he's a master at his craft, and I have such huge respect for you. I always go back to taking, if you know your craft, and you got an idea and you think you believe in your idea, stick with it and take a risk. I'm always about taking those chances and taking those risks, and you learn from those in order to improve and better yourself, not only just as a human being, but in your craft. So believe in what you're thinking and putting down, and follow it through and try it. Trying is the only way to really sort of succeed in life, I think. And being courageous, mate, and being curious about what's happening in other spaces, and don't pigeonhole yourself into one thought process. Always be inspired by what's happening around you. And I know there's a bunch of things as well, but also no idea is the right idea. I always believe as well. Like, I've worked for a lot of big creative leaders in my time. Some of them's like, no, this is what we have to do. It's like, no. Creative is so subjective. And so you have to listen, keep your ears open, and be amenable to feedback and change. If your idea is not perceived to be the most perfect one, like, I think, a good idea can come from so many different places and people collectively. So always be willing to keep your mind and ears open to feedback and input in order to help build on an idea that you may have in order for it to grow.
And in the spirit of that, I kept my eyes and ears open, and I was courageous. I bought reversetedlasso.com. I now own it. I'm going to sell it to you for $20,000. That's my risk. How did I do?
Well, you did great. Well, actually, your risk for you. Let's make a show. We could, make the show. I'll be the star of. It could be a British guy enters a NFL team, and
this stuff writes itself, man. This one writes itself, I think. All right, Will. Thanks for coming on the show, brother. Appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you too, mate. You're the best.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Courageous Podcast. If you enjoy the show, don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts so more people can find us. See you again next week.